Hi, my name's Donna Olson, and I'm the administrator of Interim Healthcare, the Gift of Hospice here in San Diego. The purpose of today's presentation is to begin to educate the staff on what to expect when we are surveyed by the Community Health Accreditation Program. So today's presentation will specifically address patient and family information and what the surveyors are most likely to talk to your patients and their family members about. And you have these forms available to you, but I will be talking about specifically how you can answer the surveyor's questions when they address each regulation. So you have an interview guide there to use, and if you don't have the interview guide, that's okay. You'll still be able to use this information. The regulation number for the patient and family section starts at core section 1, number 6B, and it says that there are interpretive services provided and indicated as necessary to ensure accurate communication between the patient, family, caregiver, and other types of health services personnel. So basically they're saying, well, what kind of interpretive services are available for your Spanish-speaking population, for instance? And we have in the policy manual, and all of you have received on multiple occasions, an updated chart that's got resources and devices available. In addition to having Spanish-speaking staff on service, we have a variety of other language speakers available through our partner home health office, both upstairs and in Escondido. And so your chart does have those phone numbers, as well as the language line information, which is a service available to everyone in San Diego County. So we are always able to communicate in whatever language is needed for a patient and their family members to understand what service they're getting. The acknowledgement that they've received it in a way that they can understand it happens when the patient signs their consent for services. The next standard is C2.1C, and it states written admission documents provided to the patient or the patient's representative prior to or at the time of initiation of care services ensure organizational compliance with the Client Bill of Rights and other regulatory requirements. And basically that all those words just mean, does your patient have an understanding of what their rights are, and are you giving them a Bill of Rights? And I realize now I failed to show you several of the pieces of literature and available information for patients that are in other languages, including our brochures done in Spanish, How Hospice Can Help. We have the 3-page information sheet that is in Spanish for patients, as well as how to dispose of their medicines, which is a requirement, and even a When the Time Comes booklet, which is a tool that we use to help patients and family members understand what signs and symptoms to expect as they lose their loved ones. So we have a When the Time Comes booklet, and we have that same information available in Spanish. We have it available in multiple languages. Sorry, I failed to show you that to begin with. So back to the client or patient's Bill of Rights, one of which is that they get the information in a language that's understandable. At admission, our admission nurse actually takes in what we call a start of care packet to the patient's home, and it's the red notebook. We refer to it as the red notebook. Inside the red notebook is a manila folder full of forms, but also inside the red notebook are multiple educational materials for the patient and the family. In this red notebook, which stays in the house, are copies of the patient's statement, Bill of Rights. Additionally, anything the patient signs, they receive a copy of what they've signed, and it's left in the notebook. So in this regulation, we're supposed to we certainly hope that our patients will confirm that they received their Bill of Rights and other admission information. Even if a patient should say to a surveyor, no, I didn't ever get a Bill of Rights, I don't know what you're talking about, and you say, well, what about the red notebook, and you can't find the red notebook, rest assured, employees, that we have their signed consent here in the office indicating they did in fact receive their Bill of Rights. They received it in a language they were able to understand, and unfortunately they've just lost their copy at the house, which we'd be happy to provide again for them if they'd like. So if a surveyor asks you, tell me how you respect patients' rights, one of the answers may be, well, from the beginning of the start of care, when the nurse first goes out, she presents the patient with a copy of their actual Bill of Rights. They review them, and the patient actually signs indicating they received them. I'll give you more examples as we go along. The next regulation is Core Section 2.1D, and I'm just going down the line in the interview guide that you have. And that is, a reasonable attempt is made and documented to ensure that the patient and family understand their rights and responsibilities, which are reviewed with the patient prior to or at the time of initiation of care and periodically thereafter. And while these may sound very repetitive and often even the same thing, regulations are like that. They often say exactly the same thing with the exception of one word, a different verb. And so each one is its own regulation, and a surveyor will look for us to answer each one and be able to demonstrate either by interview with the patient family or documentation or interview with the staff how we're meeting each one. So again, this is the Bill of Rights, and the regulation clearly says they have to be presented with this information at the time or before we provide care. So what that means is we can't go have them sign a bunch of paperwork and start taking care of them on Monday, and then Tuesday go back and say, oh, I forgot to tell you about our Bill of Rights. We have to do the client Bill of Rights and responsibilities at the time of admission when we initiate care. And that's what that particular regulation says. So we want our patients and families to be able to articulate understanding that information and that they got it prior to or at the start of care. The next one is Core Section 2.2a, which says that care, services, and products are provided within an established time frame as specified by organizational policy, organizational standards, medical directives, or individual physician orders. Consideration is given to patient and/or family needs in scheduling and providing care. What the surveyor is looking for your patients and their families to be able to tell the surveyor is that they understand and knew when people would be coming to their home to provide care and what to do if it was after regular business hours or holidays, weekends, etc. So the way that we assure family members that they know when we're coming is, again, a part of this initial start of care packet. So in addition to the patient's Bill of Rights being in here, the 3-page consent they sign indicates that we're sharing with them information about their scheduling and our arrival. So we have documentation that they knew in advance and would know in advance when we were coming. Inside the red Start of Care notebook is also calendars that are monthly calendars. And each time one of our staff goes to the patient's home, they pull this calendar out of the red notebook and they actually write when they expect to be back so that our families always know when to expect us. That's not the only thing that we do to assure that our families and patients know that they're coming. Additionally, we call and give a 2-hour window of when we expect to be there on the day we're coming or the night before if it's a morning visit. That way for our elderly people who forget a lot, or if something has changed on the red notebook calendar, they always know when to expect us. Additionally, we are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we have a red form that we post reminding patients and their families not to call 911, but rather to call us at that phone number 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And our phone number here in San Diego is 858-737-7482. If you're watching this video somewhere else, you won't want to write that number down because we're only in San Diego County. So when the surveyor asks your patients or your families, what do you do if it's Saturday afternoon and you need to talk to your nurse? You want their answer to be, I do the same thing I would do on Tuesday at 1 o'clock. I call 858-737-7482, a number that, by the way, is right here on the front of my red notebook, written large to make it easy for patients to see. Okay? And the next regulation, and the last one for this particular section, is C3.3a. Detailed written instructions are given to patients and our family members to ensure an appropriate and timely response on the part of the patient and or family in the event of a natural disaster, inclement weather, and or other emergent event that might cause an interruption in the provision of services. And essentially what that means is that our patients and their families are aware of their responsibilities in the event of an emergency episode. We have in the Starter Care packet, and part of what the patient does sign and keeps a copy of in the folder, our Patient Emergency Disaster Preparedness Plan. When the nurse admits the patient, she assigns the patient a risk level of low, average, or high based on the needs of the patient. That information is shared with the patient, and this document remains in their folder, which contains not just emergency numbers and shelters and radio stations and television stations and information that they can look to for guidance, but also explains that we, the staff, will be calling them in the event that there's a declared emergency. We will call based on the order of the risk, and if we need to get to them to remove them from the area, we will coordinate that. In the event that someone's home is actually no longer safe or livable, we have contracts with facilities all over San Diego County so that we can temporarily move patients out of a danger area into a safe place where they will receive the ongoing care that they need. So we share that information with the patient and their family on admission, and a copy of this information is in their red notebook left at the home. So when a surveyor asks your patient and their family member, tell me what you would do in the event of a disaster, what we're hoping that your patients and your families will say is, well, I know that they're going to call me and take care of me, and I know that if I want to find out where to get more information, that somewhere in this red notebook, I have my own copy of that disaster plan. So in this particular presentation, we focused on the patient's rights and responsibilities and the multiple ways that we attempt to address their rights and responsibilities by using verbiage and forms in a language that they can understand, by documenting and having them sign that they have received the information and understand it, and hopefully when you're the employee that writes with the surveyor, your patients will have all the right answers. Thank you. Hi, I'm Donna Olson, and I'm the administrator at Interim Healthcare, the Gift of Hospice here in San Diego County. This is the second in a series of presentations made for helping my employees prepare for survey. And I don't want to start over because, in fact, we do a lot of serious work and we don't laugh enough at ourselves or other things. So I'm glad I had that laugh. We'll just keep going. This is the second in a series of video presentations that we're preparing for you to be able to use to review and feel comfortable with the work you do every day and be able to address surveyors' questions and help your patients and families get ready for survey as well. You have in front of you an interview guide, and we are working on the patient and family section. We are at hospice section, which for CHAP is H1.1C, and they're going to be asking your patients and families to verbalize what the hospice mission is. And hospice care, as you know, is directed at palliative, not curative treatment, and palliative simply means to be made comfortable. Our mission is shared with patients and their families at the start of care. It's the first thing inside their start of care packet on the left side, and our mission is that we give patient and family empowered care, preserving dignity and providing comfort. Your patients and families will not be expected to remember that. They'll simply need to know that we come in order to provide comfort and care and help them take better care of their family members. That's our mission. That's what they'll understand about it. The next one is H. The H is for hospice, H2.1A, and then it's a subset number 3 and 4. Patient and family confirms that hospice patient rights and responsibilities were explained to the patient or the caregiver prior to signing verification of receipt of rights. All that means is we actually gave them a copy of their rights and responsibilities prior to asking, and reviewed them with them before we asked them to sign their receipt of them. And that Statement of Rights and Responsibilities is one of the documents in the Start of Care packet, the red notebook that remains in their house. The next one is H2.2, which is that the patient, family, and caregiver are able to identify mechanisms and criteria established to determine transfer to different levels of care. So we'll talk about that for a minute. What the surveyor is hoping the patients and families understand is information that we do provide for them at the beginning of care about the different levels of care. In the Start of Care notebook, on the right side is an actual Medicare document that inside it has the different levels of care, of which there are 4. There's routine hospice care, which is most of what we do and deliver in the home. There's respite care, where a patient can be moved from their home to a facility for 5 days maximum at a time, so that the caregiver or family member can stay in their home and not be a caregiver for 5 days. So it's a respite period, a vacation period for the caregiver. That's the second level of care. There's what's called continuous care, which is delivered in the patient's home. It's hourly care that's designed by Medicare to be used when a patient's symptoms are out of control. So there's routine hospice care. There is continuous care when the patient gets sicker and needs more hours. And then if we are not able to manage their symptoms and pain control on continuous care, there's the 4th level, which is called short-term inpatient or general inpatient care, where we actually move a patient from their home to a contracted nursing home or hospital for short-term inpatient care to get their symptoms under control. This particular regulation is asking patients and families if they understood when we admitted them that if we weren't able to keep them comfortable at home, that there were other levels of care that they would be entitled to for us to get them comfortable. So they get that information in the Start Care packet at the beginning, and we actually additionally provide a descriptive form that's in the packet that tells them exactly what continuous home care is. So the next regulation is Hospice 2.2E. Patient, family, caregiver verbalizes understanding of services and satisfaction with his or her role in providing care, treatment, and other admissions. So this particular regulation is designed to help. We professionals recognize that the caregivers need to have an understanding of what the service will be about and their role in it, because they're going to be providing care. The nurse on admission develops a care plan with the family, and that care plan is inclusive of all of the patient's needs. It addresses all the different disciplines, pain medicine, what the family members will be responsible to do, all the information that's necessary for family members to feel like they're guiding the care, that the patient and the family are responsible for the care and guiding it. The document itself is called a CPOC, the Comprehensive Plan of Care, and as you all know, we get together every Wednesday afternoon and update the CPOC. So when a surveyor says, how do your family or the caregivers out at the house know what's going on or what the plan is, or if there's a change in the plan, your answer is, oh, that happens on an ongoing basis. If the patient's condition changes, they know to call the office with that. If any of we staff members recognize a change in condition when we're doing a visit, we actually call the case manager and we put it on our interdisciplinary group line, which everybody listens to every day for updates. That information then gets written by the nurse case manager onto the document that is the Comprehensive Plan of Care, and every 2 weeks on a Wednesday afternoon, each patient is reviewed. So patients and families play a part in guiding their care, and the whole team knows what their care is through the use of the CPOC and the Wednesday afternoon interdisciplinary group meetings. So the next section we'll address will be about pain, and so I'm going to close this section by simply saying that patients and families receive a copy of their rights and responsibilities before we give them care, that they play a role in determining what the care plan is, including which level of care is most appropriate for the patient, whether that's routine hospice care at home, continuous care still delivered at home, care that's required beyond what we're capable of doing in the home, which would be short-term general inpatient or GIP level of care, or respite care, which is really not care for the patient, it's care for the family members and the caregivers. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next. Hi, my name's Donna Olson. I'm the administrator with Interim Healthcare, the Gift of Hospice here in San Diego County. Thank you for joining us today. This is presentation number 3 in a series of presentations designed to help my employees, you, feel more comfortable with answering surveyors' questions, as well as helping your patients and family members get ready for survey. So you have the interview guide in front of you, and we are going to start on page 9 with the regulation that's in the Hospice Section 2.2G for CHAP, which is that the surveyor would expect that patients are able to verbalize an understanding of pain control measures and progress toward controlling pain. What that really means is that when the surveyor goes to the patient's home, they're going to ask the patient, so how's your pain level today? Well, we know not every patient even has pain. So if a patient has no pain, that's what they'll say. If a patient is experiencing pain and it is not a new symptom, the surveyor's intent is to find out how good a job we're doing controlling their pain, because the number one responsibility that we have as hospice providers is to control end-of-life symptoms and pain. So they'll say to your patient or family, what's your pain level like? And based on that answer, they'll explore how good a job your agency, we, have done in controlling that. So they're going to say, were you in pain when you were admitted? How quickly was your pain brought under control? What do you do if the pain medicine they have ordered isn't working? Those kinds of questions. I know this is review for anyone watching this from my staff, because this is a regular part of what we talk about every single day and in every single IDG group. Our medical director visits the patients in their home. He stays in close contact with the nurse case managers. So if I have a nurse and he recognizes that a patient's current pain is not well controlled, he'll call the doctor and say, our current plan isn't working, and they'll get new medicines. The nurse then calls it to the pharmacy, goes, does the pain instruction, the use of the pain medicine with the patient and the caregiver. So the surveyor is just looking for your patients to be able to have a conversation, or caregiver to have a conversation about what their pain control measures have been and are. H2.3C and H2.3D, patient, family, caregiver are able to describe how to access services at all hours. So the surveyor is going to say, what do you need? What do you do if you need something after hours? We're a 24/7 available hospice. We do post there at the bedside for our patients this document that indicates our availability. It's the same 24-hour number. We do not use an answering service. We do not have a triage service. When our patients or their families call us after hours, on the weekends, holidays, etc., it's the same number as if they called during a regular working day. It's the number that's on the front of their Start of Care packet, 858-737-7482. We teach the patients at Start of Care to use that number. So only one number, so it's the number that's on all of the documents that they get. It's the number that's on our ink pens, it's the number that's on our teaching materials, and we're available 24/7. When they call that number, they get a registered nurse. That registered nurse is the same nurse. We're going to have to take cover under the table. Sounds like we have incoming from Miramar. Oh, good. The shield we deployed worked. That number is answered by a registered nurse, and that registered nurse is the same nurse who's going to end up going out to do the on-call visit for them. We are proud of that and should be proud to share that with the surveyor, because that's not what most hospices do. Usually, a patient after hours has to call, get an answering service, wait for a call back. When they get the call back, they give the report of why they're calling. Then it's a totally different person than the person they're talking to that ends up coming out to do the on-call visit. We're really proud of the fact that our patients and families go through it one time and a nurse is on the way. And it's a registered nurse and they answer the phone. It's not an answering machine. It's not a triage system. It's not a third party. It's the nurse that's going to take care of what that patient needs. And you should be proud to answer the surveyor with that. And your patients and their families know that, so they will be too. And H2.4b says the patients and families confirm that they're participating in determining the appropriateness to start hospice care. So this regulation is about patients and their families understanding what hospice actually is and for. If the patient and their family want to keep going back to the emergency room every time they feel like they have a changing symptom, we share with them when we do that, start of care admission, they may not be ready for hospice. Hospice is when patients want to stay at home and be comfortable. They can go to the emergency room, but they have to call us first, because we might be able to prevent that from them. And you know, a trip to the emergency room really takes its toll on an elderly terminal patient. So it's not the best course of action. So this regulation, and when a surveyor talks with them, they're hoping your patients and your families are able to articulate that at the start of care, when they were introduced to the concept of hospice, they understood that it's palliative to promote comfort and not curative, and that they're electing to let us, the hospice team who specialize in symptom control, keep them comfortably at home. I'm going to stop on that section because time-wise, I think that's enough for one swallowing. So in review, these particular components are about the caregiver and patient receiving directions and understanding their role in the development of the care plan. And the changes in the care plan can come from the patient, the family, or any of the staff, and all the involved parties are shared that information either via telephone messages, direct contact, or patient visits, and certainly with the whole team on a regularly scheduled basis every Wednesday in the interdisciplinary group. That as their control needs change, we are communicating that, and that the patients are in charge of how their pain is controlled. And that after hours, we are accessed by the same during regular business hours phone number, which the patients get and have available in their home. And upon interest in hospice at the very information visit and start of care, there's a discussion of what's appropriate to begin hospice care and what the expectation then would be once a patient has elected to sign on. So when the surveyor asks you or your families those questions, now you know how to answer them. And you can do it without the jets in the background. Thanks. Hi, I'm Donna Olson, and I'm the administrator for Interim Healthcare, the Gift of Hospice, here in San Diego County. Welcome. I'm glad you are here. This is presentation number 4 in a series of presentations we're preparing for you to help you be a little bit more comfortable with survey. And since this is my 4th one, I'm actually going to be a little bit more comfortable. So you have an interview guide in front of you that has the sections that we're going to review. And you know the forms. You're not going to see anything new on here, but rather a review. So what I want to do is help to provide you with the answers that the surveyor is looking for from you, as well as from the patient and their family members, so that you can prepare your patients and families. So we're on page 9 of your interview guide, and we have already completed the patient and family sections prior to that. So we're going to start with hospice section 2.5 C and D, which is the 5th square down, but the 4th numbered one. And that says, patient family caregiver verbalizes familiarity with plan of care and bereavement support. So what the surveyor is hoping that your patients and families understand is that from the initial admission onto our service, they, the patients and families, are asked to contribute to this admission IDG plan of care, which outlines all the care and treatments from all the disciplines, family members, etc., to keep patients comfortable, to treat their symptoms, control pain, whatever their end-of-life stuff is about. So your patients and families on a regular basis are asked by each of you, the nurses, the chaplains, social workers, the aides, our physician when he visits, how are we doing with your plan of care? What do you want to have happen? Are we meeting all of your needs? What can we do better? Are there family members you want us to get a hold of? They remember our mission to provide that end-of-life care, preserving dignity, patient and family empowered care. So they're always guiding our care. And we want them to know they are. So when we start and we open a plan of care, part of that plan of care is also bereavement care that we will continue to provide survivors for 13 months. So our psychosocial assessment and that develops into the bereavement plan is a part of this admission plan from the get-go. And the bereavement support they receive will be in the form of telephone contact, mailed information, etc., that happens formally for 13 months after we lose a patient. So the plan of care and the bereavement plan of care start on admission. As far as the bereavement support, not only will they receive regular phone calls from our bereavement coordinator and our other members of the team, but on a regular basis we'll be mailing them packets of information, some of which are just booklets. When you are grieving, there are specific bereavement packets that we send on at 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. So the plan of care for bereavement starts at admission and is followed through for 13 months after the loss of the family member. Although that's formal, the 13 months is formal. After 13 months, we are always available, and our family members get that and know that in writing, that it can be 10 years later and we're just a phone call away. That's our bereavement support. And we want our family and patients to be able to not necessarily know all of that for the surveyor, but to be able to say to a surveyor, oh no, they've already told me they're going to be following up with me for a year after she dies. That's what our bereavement support is about. Okay? H2.5I is patient and families confirm that a copy of the policy was received and discussed at the time of initial drug order. What's missing there that looks a little weird for you guys is some of the regulations are so long that they aren't written in that first empty column. But this particular regulation is telling us that we're required to tell patients and their families how to dispose of drugs that are left after they lose their loved one. And in the start of care packet that the nurse does when he admits the patient, there is a 2-page document called Information Regarding Managing Your Medications and Disposing of Unused Medication Policy. That policy and those directions are reviewed with the patient and their family, and they sign them. So when the patient expires, they have in their red notebook the actual directions for what they're supposed to do with those leftover medicines. This is a really key point, so hear me on this one and pay close attention. Those medicines don't belong to us. Once they're delivered to the patient, they belong to the patient. It's up to family members what they want to do with them. What we're required to do is tell them how to dispose of them. They don't have to dispose of them, and we don't. We don't bring those medicines back to be able to use them on another patient. We don't dispose of the medicines ourselves in the home. And if the family asks us to do that, we can do that with the family, and they must sign the document indicating they witnessed you threw the 25 morphine tablets away. You poured the 15 milliliters down the drain. But that's not what we want to do. When they ask you, what do I do with the meds? You need to refer them back to their Red Start of Care notebook, where they have their 2-page copy of directions for disposing of meds. Okay? So the surveyor may say, what are you going to do with those medicines that the doctor says you no longer need to take? You want your patients and your family members to say, well, they belong to me, so I should throw them away. I don't know if I'll throw them down the toilet or what, but I remember good old Nurse Jim. He reviewed that with me when we signed on, and I got copies of it in my notebook. I'll look and see how I'm supposed to throw them away. Okay? And H2.5J number 1 says, patients state they have been instructed in the use of medical equipment and supplies. It's really simple and basic, and I don't think we'll have any trouble with that one. I think all of you know when the equipment company delivers their equipment, whether that's beds, walkers, oxygen, that they give directions for how to use it. In their notebook in the house are also signed copies of the patient or caregiver or whoever received the directions for the use of the equipment, as well as In our 6-page comprehensive hospice assessment, which is part of what the nurse does, there's a DME section, durable medical equipment section, where they indicate what the equipment is and that the instruction on the use has been done. For supplies, which are more like catheters, dressings, etc., the nurse on a regular basis gives directions and instructions for how to use those, how to address wound care needs, how to change a dressing, how to empty a catheter, all of those supplies. So if a surveyor goes in and sees a patient has a catheter, the surveyor's likely to say, "So, Mrs. Thompson, what happens when that bag is full of urine?" They're looking for Mrs. Thompson to say, "Well, I have a container there that my nurse brought me, and I unhook it, empty it." And she'll say, "Well, how do you know how to do that right?" And she'll say, "Well, my nurse showed me how to do it." That's what the surveyor is looking for your patients and families. Something that supports the fact that we're teaching them how to take care of what they need to when we're not in the home with them. Okay? And finally, in that section, patients verbalize expected appropriate care and services conforming to plans of care are provided, and observation supports patients' understanding. Okay, that appropriate care and services are provided, that they conform to the plans of care, and observation supports the patient understanding that. So that's H2.8a. It's kind of a summary statement that says that patients get that they have this assessment. The nurse bases the care and services on the outcome of that assessment and that it's appropriate, that they get the direction and education for the use of their equipment, their supplies, their medicines, how to dispose of their medicines. It's the overall picture that they understand they're involved in driving the care and services and that it's appropriate to them. And they understand what that care is about. And finally, H3.1L, maybe? Patient family can describe spiritual support provided. So when the nurse first goes, the nurse does a spiritual assessment. And as all of you know, spirituality is not the same as religion. We are mandated to do a psycho-spiritual assessment. Spirituality is about helping our patients recognize the value of their lives. It's about life review and identifying what their life was about, what they accomplished, why that's important, the value of it to the people they're leaving behind, their family, their friends, their church group, whatever group of people they're associated with. A patient could also be religious, and part of the psycho-spiritual assessment would be connecting with that religious source that they have in their life. We provide spiritual support from the moment we start a patient's care plan. The nurse does an assessment. We send both a chaplain and a social worker for continuing psycho-spiritual assistance and support, but always at whatever level the patient or family want that to have happen. If they are religious and they want religion as a part of their care plan, we will meet them there. If they're atheist, we will meet them there. Hospice is not a religious care, and spiritual support and the spiritual care plan is not about religion unless that's something that's of importance to the patient. So that's how we meet their spiritual support. We find out where they are in their spirituality, what they need from us to support that, and then we provide that, whether that's chaplain visits, Eucharistic minister visits, priest for last rites, whatever the patient needs. So that is the end of that section in this particular presentation, which has been about the care plan, which includes spiritual support, bereavement support that lasts 13 months but is available forever, as well as the spiritual support, which is available forever, how the patients understand and drive what their care plan is, and the documents that we use to help them understand how to dispose of meds, how to use their equipment, and how to use their supplies. Thank you, and I know you're going to be great when the surveyor asks you these questions.